Hello, and welcome to another edition of Heavy Hands. I am your host, Connor. With me, as always, is Phil.
Hello.
And I was hoping this wouldn't be an issue, but if you just heard a hint of resentment in Phil's voice there, which it was pretty hard to miss, it's because I was late. Phil is running late because of me. So if there's a frisson of tension in the air, I mean, who knows, Phil? Maybe it'll lead to some great podcasting.
We've certainly got a wealth of relevant material to work off this week.
Yeah. I'm just saying, we've tried sexual tension in the past. That doesn't do much for us.
Yeah, I mean, once we satiated that sexual tension in that one night that we never speak of,
we just end up having shameful sex, and you don't really detect it on the episodes.
Yeah. All tension's gone since then.
Yeah. So anyway, welcome to Heavy Hands. We are between two fight night cards this week, a familiar position to be in, but I have enjoyed it less in the past than I am currently enjoying it, because last week's card, at the very least, was, I thought, very good. The main event, Rose Namajunas versus Tracy Cortez, a last-minute replacement, but a very good one, all things considered. We also had Dober-Silva, one of many recent stories of fighters making insane turnarounds in order to replace somebody in another fight. Dober-Silva fought 2 weeks ago. He knocked out Charles Jourdain. Now he fought up a weight class against Drew Dober and won. The fight was an unbelievable slugfest. We'll be talking about that. My boy Christian Rodriguez was actually doing better than I expected against Julian Erosa, and lost anyway. Just lots of little stuff. I mean, Joshua Van, Charles Johnson. We talked about the third round comeback power, but we didn't expect that. A lot of big stuff happened on this card. Quite a few upsets. And next week we have Lemos-Jandiroba. We haven't decided what beyond the main event we might discuss from that, but we'll be getting to that later. I want to talk about Rose and Tracy Cortez. I want to, as righteous punishment for me being late, I want to feel the sting of your rebuke, Phil. You said, we just did Bobby Knuckles Alaskarov. This is the same shit. Rose is simply too good and too experienced for Tracy Cortez. And I said, well, I don't know. She hasn't been looking that good. She has a head case. I said a bunch of stuff. And I was wrong. I was very, very wrong. This was kind of a masterclass as far as more experienced fighter takes on young prospect fights go. At least it had that feeling of one fighter being very much in control of the proceedings.
Yeah, I feel like it felt like a learning fight for Cortez.
Absolutely. I don't think she made a terrible account of herself, and she kind of started to figure out what she should have been doing from the start much later. So and showed her toughness in that as well. So
yeah, I felt like it was mostly like a demonstration of levels, and by the end of it, Cortez was like, "Oh, this is what I need to be doing." And yeah, by the end of it, it also, it didn't entirely lay any of those questions that people might have about Rose Namajunas to bed, because she started off very strong and ended up perhaps less so.
Yeah.
In very much a sort of Jose Aldo, Leon Edwards, there's no question about who won this fight kind of way. But
yeah,
it wasn't belt to belt domination.
But even in that regard, a pretty typical good performance from Rose Namajunas. This woman has been in, I think this was her 10th 5-round fight, which is pretty nuts when you consider she has less than 20 fights total on her record. This was either her 9th or 10th 5-rounder.
That is insane.
Isn't that crazy? I mean, she fought for the title in her 4th pro fight. That's what you get when you rock it up that quickly. And in a lot of them, I mean, you in fact noted probably around the time she rematched Joanna or shortly thereafter that she is she's a fast starter across the fight.
Mm-hmm.
She will kind of wear herself out, but seem to get a minute or two of renewed energy and aggression to start each of like the last 3 rounds.
Yep.
But she does kind of taper off, and she doesn't get a full round of consistency after the first 2 or 3. And that's happened a lot at varying paces. It just seems to be a kind of process that's built into Rose, however, whatever strategy she follows, and I think that's very much what happened here.
Yeah. So yeah, the fight. So yeah, I mean, I think mostly this came down to 2 things, at least, like right at the beginning. And yeah, once again, with regards to like the Bobby Knuckles, Alaskarov like thing, this came really close to being that because for the first time in a while, like Rose actually hurt someone.
Yep.
And I was like, wow, maybe it will just be that. Maybe it will just be. Maybe
I'm a genius, you thought.
Yeah. Maybe it'll just be like the overmatched person getting KO'd in the first round. But, Rose maybe didn't follow up in the best way, kind of just jumped into her guard. And, it's women's flyweight. It's not middleweight. You're just not going to be dusting people like that. But yeah, I felt like a lot of this was sort of driven by Rose's ability to work her way into offense. Mm-hmm. Which is essentially her ability to have a feint to draw reactions, a soft jab, that she doesn't have too much behind to draw reactions, a hard jab, a right hand, and then a takedown. And so it's all kind of gradated in terms of commitment, which means that she's able to kind of go 3 steps down what she's doing. She's able to like go feint, left hand, and then, next time she'll go feint 1-2, that she's essentially able to sort of build sort of ladders of commitment as she's in order to like open up Cortez. And Cortez does not have anything like that, which meant that like absent her just charging Rose, and in which case, Rose was looking to just skirt away from it, she was just sort of looking at her and waiting until she was going to be in striking range so that she could exchange with her, which kind of meant that she was just eating a lot of clean strikes over the like first 2 rounds of the fight.
Yeah. You know what it made me, because very much the fight was defined by the experience difference. Mm-hmm. That was almost every single sequence that caught my eye. I'm like, okay, this happened because one of these fighters is a veteran and the other very much is not. I'll draw a strange parallel for what it makes me think of. I think of when I started writing, particularly trying to write fiction. When I didn't know precisely what I was like trying to say, I just wanted to tell a fun story. Mm-hmm. And I would write some lines, and I would get this sense because I'd read a lot. I was like, this needs to be longer. When good writers write stuff, there's like stuff between these lines. And so then I would just like insert some sentences, which didn't particularly move the story forward or lend any insight into what the dialogue parties were thinking or anything. But there's supposed to be stuff here. That's how Tracy Cortez felt in there against Rose to me. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of quote-unquote empty spaces in a fight, which good fighters experienced fighters rather, just unconsciously fill. They're not filling space. They are constantly making adjustments. Okay, what do you do if I go to this angle? What if I give you this feint? What if I show you a different head position? All sorts of business that you can be doing in those moments between we're trading punches that allows you to enhance your control of the fight, allows you to dictate how the exchanges are going to look when they happen and when they happen. And Tracy didn't have that. She's never had to have it because she is basically a novice compared to Rose. And this resulted in a lot of time where Rose was really able to set Tracy up, just completely unbeknownst to her. Here's a look. Oh, you're not responding to it at all. I can just step in and touch you. But it also led to some things that really caught my eye as the fight played out, because what I'm basically saying is I think Tracy was sort of planless. She didn't know what she didn't know, and she didn't know what she was supposed to be doing between the parts where you trade punches with each other. And she had to find that over the course of the fight, and she did sort of. She found the very simple, straightforward plan that basically all MMA fighters discover, which is go forward, do more. Mm-hmm. And it kind of started to work. Up to that point, though, what I noticed was this is just something that happens, particularly with big experience gaps. Tracy getting punished a ton for mimicking Rose. Did you notice any of this? No. This is a thing you do when you're inexperienced. And you see this in fights all the time. Somebody's like, it's a thing you pick up from sparring that really shouldn't go in a fight. An attitude of, oh, you do cool move A to me, I can do cool move A too.
Like when someone does a wheel kick.
Exactly.
Immediately does a wheel kick.
You see that even in fights, but it is that you do that all the time in sparring, just unconsciously, because you're playing. And the challenge to meet there isn't my partner's going to knock me out. It's my partner's doing cool shit. He's showing off. I can't let him show off on me, so I'll do cool shit too. And it wasn't always to that extreme, but one that caught my eye was Tracy getting punished for after Rose teeped her in the face. Mm-hmm. She, about 10 seconds elapse, and then she just kind of throws a random teep of her own to the face, tries to front kick Rose upstairs, and gets punished. But there's also a moment, I think, in round 2 where they're squaring off, and Tracy is, actually might be in round 3. Tracy's kind of settling in. She's gained her comfort back. She recovered from getting hurt early, and she's figuring out, what she's supposed to be worried about, what are the openings she's leaving. And so Rose is kind of pressuring her a bit, and she's giving her lots of feints, very active, right on the edge of range. And Tracy is locked in. You can tell. She is doing what Rose has been doing the entire fight, adjusting her position, not just letting the opponent stand in front of her and show her stuff to gauge her reaction, but making little adjustments, not standing in one place. And seeing this, that there's no easy opening, Rose visibly relaxes her shoulders and takes a step back, and then Tracy relaxes. And then Rose steps in and nails her with a right hand. The mimicry of body language and the turn taking is another thing that inexperienced fighters do. And continually, especially in the first half of this fight, Tracy was surprised when Rose appeared to give her turn and then didn't let her finish it. Mm-hmm. All of these were inexperienced behaviors that I caught over and over again from Tracy Cortez early in this fight, which just spoke to what you said when you made your prediction. Like, Tracy Cortez clearly has talent. She's looked good against a very certain level of competition. And now let's put her in there against somebody who has fought for the title like 5 times. Yeah. And you just don't know what you don't know until at least 3 rounds of having that proven to you, and then you kind of start to figure it out.
Yeah, I think, as you said, she kind of started to figure out that she just needed to do more. And yeah, I think also just Rose was
fading a bit.
She was fading, yeah. I think she was fading a bit, and it was a little bit of the Jose Aldo kind of.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't even need to try that hard in this round,
Yeah, whether it's disinterest or sometimes it also seems like mental fatigue.
Mm-hmm.
Because she is, even as like a pot shotter, she is when she's in domination mode, a very active, engaged fighter. Like I said, constantly making those adjustments, threatening, trying not to give anything away for free to the opponent. She is really locked in, and that can be mentally exhausting.
Yeah, that's why we get so many, as we've said so many times, that's why we get so many lightning fast starters that simply cannot maintain over the course of a fight. You have to make your trade-off somewhere.
Yep.
And there's there's pretty much no fighters who start off blazingly quick and are still as locked in as that.
Yeah.
Late on in the fight. Like maybe Mighty Mouse at certain points in his career, I don't know.
Yeah, and not even all throughout his career. Yeah, I would agree.
Sometimes Max Holloway, who knows? But even then, he's not like a devastating threat early in the fight most of the time.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I was thinking of other people who finish really strong, but most of them aren't Conor McGregor-style first-round killers, which Rose is.
Yeah, and almost was this time.
Yeah, it was nice to be reminded of that. It was nice to see her. I mean, I do think, aside from Cortez being vastly underexperienced and just unprepared in ways she couldn't know about, I do think Rose looked better than in her last fight.
Mm-hmm.
She looked more relaxed. As a result, her strikes ended up looking a lot more confident and decisive without her having to overthrow them. She just looked really locked in. It occurred to me, this is something I didn't know about, but since you can't talk about Rose's performances without talking about her personal life, it seems. Aside from, and perhaps, I have no idea, but perhaps connected to the split with Trevor Whitman, apparently until very recently, Pat Barry was like horribly addicted to booze and pills.
Oh.
So that was maybe what their home life was like. Her, fiance, husband, whatever they are now, / head coach, just being like fucked out of his head on pills every night, or possibly more than just at night. Who knows? Maybe what we saw in our last fight, maybe what we would have seen in the last two fights if she hadn't gotten immediately injured in the first one was was just an unfocused Rose Namajunas, a distracted, unmotivated Rose. I think you saw it still in there when she broke her finger. That became a very determined performance. Who knows what it would have looked like without some never say die moment like that, sort of inspiring Rose to get super aggressive. But the last fight against Hibash looked very, I don't think unfocused is an unfair characterization.
Yeah, just tepid.
Yeah. So who knows? Maybe these are things that it's just difficult for us to know about that also have an effect, perhaps particularly on fighters like Rose, saying nothing against her, just that I think she's just one of those people who's a bit susceptible to the turmoils going on in her life and in her head.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, she's always been a head case, which is sort of made it all the more impressive that she's she's had such a consistently successful career.
Yes.
She's been in there with, fights where we did not think she would win them the second time round, like, or that she would be in very, big trouble, like Andrade and Jacek or Weili Zhang.
Yep.
But yeah, she's always on the edge of, always seems like almost on the edge of collapsing, but in fact, just like rarely does.
Yeah, that's the truth. There have been, at the end of the day, there have been as many cases as there are of Rose like suffering for being this particular kind of head case and losing because of it, or having an underwhelming performance because of it. There are at least as many of cases of fights where we thought that would be an issue and it just wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
But she just overcame it. So yeah, she is a remarkable fighter. I mean, there's no question about that. So just before we move on, I talked at least about things that stuck out as marks of Cortez's inexperience. Did anything stick out to you on the flip side? What were some impressive veteran moves that you caught from Rose? Anything stand out in your mind?
You mean just like apart from her ability to just, as I said, sort of layer her way into exchanges without taking too much risk?
Yeah, I mean,
no, nothing I can really think of. Like her ability to, like, I thought her kicking game was pretty well judged most of the time throughout this one.
Mm-hmm.
She was just like constantly peppering either the legs or like throwing something from the lead leg. I thought the way that she can layer her entries, obviously, like that's what led to that knee tap being so easy.
Yeah.
When she eventually went to it in round, I think right towards the end of round 2.
Mm-hmm.
Because she dulled Cortez's reaction so well. But no, nothing I can really think of other than that.
Yeah. There were just a couple things that I thought were great veteran moves. I thought the timing of a lot of the takedowns from Rose were very much chosen at moments when Cortez had kind of gotten her back up.
Mm-hmm.
And was threatening by sheer force of will and athletic prowess to make some headway into the fight, to steal some momentum back. Started pressuring Rose, maybe started landing a couple shots. And Rose would just cool her off. It's something experienced fighters do to novices, is just put them in a corner sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what those takedowns did. She went for them, and I think very deliberately just got to a good position. She frequently ended up immediately in mount and just stayed low and stayed in control, didn't try to do too much, and let Cortez tucker herself out a little bit. And there's another version of that on the feet in the 5th round, which is easily Cortez at her most focused, most determined. I thought she made a really, really good effort to do what she needed to do to try to win here. Her corner's out there yelling at her like, be a legend. Like, you're losing this fight, but you can win it now. And she looked like she believed that. To start round 5. And Rose just let her blow it off, the steam. She moved around a lot. She stuck her with some jabs. And I'm trying to remember what fight it was. Maybe it was O'Malley-Vera? I think so. There's a moment in the 5th round of that where Vera has finally gained some momentum in round 4, his only round of the fight. Sean O'Malley comes out, and his corner is like, go after him, be aggressive, yada, yada. Sean O'Malley doesn't listen to them. He goes out there, he sees that Cheeto is all fired up. He's finally ready to pressure like he should have been all night long. And he just kind of he just lets him hit nothing. He lets him pour all that energy out into open space. He keeps his feet moving, resets, maintains the distance. And it turns out, at the end of the day that, you know what? Ilya Tupuria, Josh Emmett was another example of this. Emmett went ape shit at the start of round 5 because he was completely losing. He very admirably went for it. And Ilya Tupuria just let him do it. Just didn't let him land. That's when you go into pure evasion mode. Because it turns out most fighters, even very good ones, only really have like a minute or two of max intensity in them at any moment. And you just ride it out. That's what Rose did to Cortez here. Cortez is she gets a lot of success, but I think after about 2 minutes in round 5, the momentum shifts again, and Rose is sort of largely back in control.
Yep.
And again, I think that's a veteran move, just staying calm in those moments and knowing when it's okay to be a purely defensive fighter.
Yep.
Veteran understanding from Rose Namajunas. That's what I saw. Very calm and deliberate, workmanlike, in a good way, workmanlike performance.
Yeah. I mean, it still leaves her in just a very, very strange place.
Yeah.
She's not tearing through the division, but she's just racking up solid quality wins. She's not looking at her absolute best, but she's just doing fairly consistently well. And, it's still at the point where I would just be like, if you put her against Alexa Grosso, would I give her a good chance of winning? Absolutely.
Yep.
She's just still managing somehow to maintain and keep moving forwards.
Someone like Macy Barber.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like she could do a lot of this stuff, and yet you still kind of
exactly.
You still kind of wonder.
If we're talking experience and depth, then
we're talking craft. We're talking
absolutely. Rose could teach her those couple of lessons.
If we're talking about the ability to manage a fight, yeah. But then you still wonder, don't you? You're like, well, that's a really.
We're also talking about the ability to go wild and hold smash.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I mean, I suspect they'll probably just rebook that one.
Sure. I mean, I would be very curious to see it. I'm provided I know Macy Barber's got her own health problems going on right now, so hopefully we do get to see that fight not too long in the future.
Yep.
All right. Well, let's take a break there then. When we come back, like I said, there was a lot of other interesting stuff on this card. I think at the very least, we'll probably talk about Silva Dober, Erosa-Rodriguez, and Johnson Van. And then a little later on, I suppose we will at least mention Lemos-Jandiroba. Although, frankly, I'm just more excited about last weekend's card right now. I thought there was a lot of cool stuff to talk about. All right, so let's take a break now. We'll come back and talk about it after this.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to this week's Heavy Hands. If you like what you hear, please consider pledging to support the podcast on Patreon. Patreon is basically continuous crowdfunding. You sign up to contribute a certain amount per month to help us with production costs and the like, and in return you get rewards ranging from a mention on the Heavy Hands website to a question or topic of your choice being discussed on the show. We have a lot more in the works to reward you for your help, and we appreciate every contribution. No amount is too small. Just head over to patreon.com and find how you can help out, the only show dedicated to the finer points of face punching. Now let's get back to it.
Welcome back to Heavy Hands. Let's continue moving down this Namajunas-Cortez undercard. We're going to skip over Salikov-Ponzinibbio, which I enjoyed. It was fine for what it was. But we got to get to the lightweights. Drew Dober was supposed to be fighting, who was it originally on this card? Mike Davis, that's right. And Mike Davis had to withdraw. Jean Silva, who just fought 2 weeks ago against Charles Jourdain and got a very impressive win, decided, hey, I don't have to cut weight, or at least not as much. I'm still in shape. I hardly took any damage. Let's fight the most consistently brutal puncher in the lightweight division on 2 weeks' notice or less. And, boy, this one's got to hurt for the old Zane, you know?
Why?
It's a fighting nerd.
Oh, yeah.
John Silva is a...
Like, the fighting nerds, what are they at the moment? They've got to be like 9-0.
Yeah.
Over their last 9 fights, right?
Yeah. 9-0. Just the henchest nerds you've ever seen in your life are out here just... Basically, what it is really, I think, is that Zane, he's very protective of his nerd identity. I think it sort of suggests...
All nerds are. It's part of being a nerd. That's why we've
That's true.
had such wonderful things as, like, Gamergate and... all the weird stuff that happens with like the Hugos and so on.
Yeah, all of which Zane has been very closely involved with.
Yeah, like he's vociferously been.
He does not. He's still talking about Gamergate.
He just won't shut up about it.
I was like, it's done, Zane. Just become a Nazi now. You know, everybody else moved on. Everybody else has leveled up. Jesus Christ. But anyway, yeah, with a guy like Jean-Silva out there calling himself a nerd, quoting some line from Hajime no Ippo, and it makes Zane just gnash his teeth. It's because it sort of suggests that if this guy's a nerd and he can do this, maybe I've wasted my life. That's how.
It also says don't as with all the sort of nerd defense things. It's don't take this away from me.
Yeah,
it's all I have left. It's all I have.
Exactly.
You can take the Lord of the Rings and anime.
What? No one's taking the Lord of the Rings, are they? Are they taking the Lord of the Rings?
And they will be soon.
Oh,
are you going to stop them?
No, I'll try. I'll try my best.
Gondor calls for aid.
It's good. I like when the show has references to much older episodes of different shows, which are also references to movies that don't seem to make sense. Great. So anyway, Jean-Silva, as if, a bolt from the heavens sent by the very gods of nerddom to smite Zane, he went in there and fought a phenomenal fucking fight against Drew Dober on under 2 weeks' notice. And I think this man might be a star, honestly.
Yeah.
Back-to-back performances like this, I think we're looking at a contender, like a future contender, if not more. He is very impressive. What did you think of this fight?
Yeah, I mean, I picked John Silva. Also, is he called Gene Silva?
No, at least on the broadcast, they were often pronouncing it just John instead of Jean.
I swear I heard someone calling him Gene Silva.
Was it Dominic Cruz?
It might have been. That's a good point.
Or Zane, who doesn't even do it out of defensive nerd resentment.
Never listen to Dominic Cruz about anything about factual reality that is not directly fighting.
Definitely.
I've never listened to Zane about pronunciations. Yeah, for some reason I swear. Anyway.
It's possible,
surely,
but
it doesn't need to be Lord Assassin. He needs to be either Long John Silva or Short John Silva.
Oh my God, Long John Silva is so. Damn it! If only he was an English speaker, he would have thought of that one.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really good nickname, especially because he's stocky and short.
Yeah.
That's a good one. We're gonna call him that from now on. I'll tell you that right now. Yeah, I mean, what did you make of his performance against Dober, though? I mean, why did Dober was struggling this entire fight? I
mean, this man is just fast as hell.
He's so...
My technical analysis, not only does he hit really hard, he is just really fast.
That's most of what I got to... I mean, the man is like a Yoel Romero athlete.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is the thing, I picked against him. I was like, well, he's going to get pressured. He's not going to get to pressure. And I made, I think, the logical assumption that so much of the comfort and accuracy and timing he shows, being a guy who pretty much just throws one strike at a time, is because he gets to pressure. He gets some initiative, and it makes his speed just too much to handle. Turns out he just stays insanely calm even when he is being pressured.
Mm-hmm.
And the speed is absolutely still too much to handle, even when the opponent is kind of walking him around the cage. That I did not expect.
No.
He was just so he was so comfortable.
I picked him largely as a Dober's chin's going to be cracked. They're going to get into a war, and then he's just going to knock him down, and he's either going to win a round, or he's going to hurt him twice, kind of thing. But it's going to be. I definitely thought it would either be less or more competitive than this. I.e., he would either just spark him out,
right,
or that it would just be a war. I did not expect that he would just be sitting there making Drew Dober look slow.
Yeah, you didn't expect that he was going to completely win the first round and not even knock Dober down or come close until the end of the second. Mm-hmm. When he fucking wheel kicks him in the face. Just because...
The wheel kick? I thought it was a spinning back elbow.
Oh, you're right. It was the elbow. Correct. Yes, absolutely. I was mixing that up with the wheel kick Salikov hurt Ponzinibbio with. Mm-hmm. Yeah, just randomly. Yeah, what's a move that like nerds like Connor and Phil would say like a fighter with my level of experience should not be relying on? Mm-hmm. I'll do a spinning elbow. It'll just work because I'm a tiny Yoel Romero.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I bring up Yoel is we're not just talking speed and power and strength, physical strength, which he showed because Dober thought he was going to wrestle Jean Silva. Ha. That didn't fucking happen. Jean Silva threw him to the ground like he was like Matt Brown fighting like some ancient jiu-jitsu fighter, like just flinging him around every time they collided. But it's also the timing, the proprioception, I guess, for lack of a better word, coordination, just like knowing where every part of his body was, making split-second decisions. He's the kind of guy like Yoel who will see you coming in and in a moment just think, flying knee. And he just does it from some strange, awkward position. Or he sees it's not there and he changes his mind halfway through the flying knee. Just like on a dime. Reverts from this insanely committal action and just goes back into movement or sets up something else. Just the insane kind of flexibility that you only get by being a truly elite athlete. Because there's still a lot I don't like about Jean Silva's game, technically. Mm-hmm. But the same was always true of Yoel Romero. At a certain point, like trying to adhere to some of that stuff might be a hindrance for you because you could just feel it out. He's just a very natural fighter. And very, very fast.
Yeah. I mean, when he does throw in combination, it's blisteringly quick. He appears to have no cardio issues.
Yeah, that too. Oh, Jesus Christ. Up here at elevation. I mean, what's going on? I don't know.
But yeah, I do find it kind of adorable that basically the Brazilian equivalent of alpha male has just decided that like we're just a bunch of like obvious like just the most clearly cool jacked out dudes around. They're just like, no, we're big nerds.
Honestly, I don't side with Zane here. I think a lot of them might be nerds. I think a lot of people are nerds. Caio Borralho, who sort of started the whole theme for that team, like that man has a master's in something. He was like we talked about this. He was like a chemistry substitute teacher. Yeah, he was a teacher. No, he doesn't have a master's. He dropped out of college because he figured out he was insanely good at fighting. But yeah, he was a substitute teacher. He's into chemistry. The man plays chess. He likes his Star Wars. Like, that's a nerd. Mm-hmm. So I personally like to imagine them as a team of... Do you remember that old meme of the big jacked Chad man?
Oh, yeah, on the internet. Yeah.
Very helpfully explaining something to some young poster.
Yeah.
That's them, I think. I think...
I find the whole fighting thing, nerds thing, very endearing.
Yeah,
but
I'm okay
John
with
Silva is a scary freak man. I didn't realize this even when he knocked out Charles Jourdain, and probably should have realized it then, because no one knocks out Charles Jourdain.
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, he's just got game-breaking physicality. That's just what it is.
Knock out Charles Jourdain and then just beat Drew Dober with complete calm and control in a fight that, for basically anybody else, the pace it was fought at, it would have been a back and forth war. Mm-hmm. But it didn't really feel like that. It felt like a torrid, action-packed fight where John Silva was simply winning the whole time.
Yep.
That was an eye-opener. Like I said, I think we are very...
And a head opener.
Yes. Oh, Jesus. Let's not even talk about it. As much as I like watching fighting, I am very squeamish about cuts like that. And I looked away from my screen for sure. Horrible.
And you know what? He did it against the Southpaw.
Yeah, that too. This
Mark
fucking guy. So, John Silva, future contender, possible future champion. He's very, very, very good in a way that doesn't necessarily make sense to a less impressive nerd like me.
Yeah. How sad are you going to be when they book him against Dan Ige?
Oh, I mean, you know. I know where Dan Ige's ceiling is. I wouldn't be too, he's out of Christian Rodriguez territory where I see him and I'm like, oh, you actually can do this though. And then it breaks my heart when he fails.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I wouldn't call this too heartbreaking, but Julian Erosa, Christian Rodriguez, I thought, once again, Christian Rodriguez showed the savvy beyond his years. I think he definitely understood what he needed to do to Julian Erosa. And I think he was doing a pretty good job of it. He pressured. He put combinations together on him. When Erosa tried to barrel forward, he stood his ground and countered. Usually came out on top of those exchanges. He won a scramble on the ground, escaping from a body triangle back mount. And then he just got guillotined.
Yep. It's a very prospect lost way of going about things.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, I thought he was doing just well. He just, as you said, he had exactly the right idea. He was pressuring Erosa. He was like throwing high kicks up there. He clipped him with one. And it's just that Erosa is, again, like super experienced in these things, but in a very different way to Rose Namajunas.
Yes.
This is a different kind of experience because Erosa, when things were going wrong for him, simply just upped the tempo every time.
Yep.
And I think, Rodriguez is essentially a thoughtful fighter and was just like, well, eventually, I will take a breather from this guy and we'll come back and figure it out. And Erosa just sort of slowed his pace a little managed to slow Rodriguez's pace a little by just being insane.
Yeah.
And Rodriguez was like, well, this guy is clearly going nuts and I will figure him out soon. On the other hand, this did also very adequately explain why Julian Erosa gets KO'd in the first round a lot. Because, Rodriguez was making him look like shit for a lot of the...
Yes.
The early going of this, like...
If Rodriguez was a slightly bigger puncher...
Yeah.
This probably would have been another one of those Julian Erosa losses, right?
Yeah. Because he's, his posture is dreadful despite being, a tall man. He just sort of...
Yeah.
He's got the sort of Shane Burgos scoliosis thing where he just puts his head way out in front and then just starts winging punches from a hunch whilst he can't see anything.
He's got the posture of someone who was probably very tall at a very young age.
Yeah.
And was embarrassed of it. And so he's got hunched shoulders and his head hanging forward.
Yeah. I mean, so... Yeah, he's a lot of the time he's just not ready to take the punches that are coming back at him.
No.
But yeah, he knows that his win condition is just upping the tempo as much as possible.
Yeah.
And yeah, something crazy happened and then he managed to capitalize on it.
But also, just grabbing a submission. I mean, I don't know if it was just me. I was very impressed that this was just a straight guard guillotine.
Mm-hmm.
There was no shot that was defended with a front headlock. There was no setup in a clinch that then resulted in jumping guillotine. You really don't see this very often in MMA.
No.
Somebody already having the opponent in their guard and just grabbing the guillotine and finishing it quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, this is another thing to speak to, is that Julian Erosa simply is a beast with all front headlock submissions and will grab them. I mean, maybe this was a flash of inexperience. It was a bit of turn-taking behavior from Christian Rodriguez. He got his back taken. He was in a bad spot. He scrambled super impressively to get back to top position. And then maybe he kind of mentally relaxed for a moment, thinking, all right, we can settle in, and then something else is going to happen later. And instead, something else happened almost immediately. Erosa did not stop processing the openings that were being given to him. Rodriguez let his head drift off to the right, and Erosa just chin-strapped him, collected his neck, and I mean, he tapped out really fast. It must have been
the other impressive thing about it is that, we know Christian Rodriguez is actually a pretty good grappler.
Great grappler, yeah.
But yeah, once again, Julian Erosa, he's just Gerald Meerschaert for his division.
Yeah.
It's just huge guy, put him away. If you put him away quick, and if you don't, there's a very strong chance he's going to box you up or tap you out.
Yeah. They have varying levels of success, and of course, they're all individuals. But we've often talked about Zane and I in particular have talked about how at like light heavyweight, there's always a guy or two who are like the guard submission grapplers, and there's just always going to be a place for them. I think it maybe is just kind of true in every division. There's always a place for just kind of a weird, messy submission hunter.
Yeah.
Who will just have his own particular way of getting people into messy fights where his just complete focus on tearing their head off at the neck will give him some chances.
Yeah,
all right.
I think so. It's just the fact that at the good weight classes, they need to be at least two-dimensional, so they need to be good strikers as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Or at least, they need to get a little lucky, survive.
Yes.
Survive some early shots, and then maybe have a crazy aggressive striking process that makes up for the weaknesses. All right, last one to talk about here before we close out this segment. We spoke about Joshua Van, and we spoke praisingly about his opponent, Charles Johnson. We thought this was a great step up, a very tough veteran for the young but super impressive Van to take on. I think we both picked Van in the end.
Yeah, absolutely.
Once again, experience prevails. This time, again, in a different way. There's lots of different ways that you can leverage experience over your opponent. I'll tell you what this fight reminded me of. Cub Swanson Duha Choi.
Yeah, that's not a bad call.
Sometimes the veteran's job is to just not get scared. I've seen this all before. It looks like I'm gonna have to go to war with you. I'm ready to do that. I've done it before. And I think Joshua Van's pressure invited more than he was actually ready to handle from Charles Johnson in return. Because about halfway through round 2, a lot of this fight was just a straight-up brawl. Some long, drawn-out exchanges where Johnson was just the one being a little more defensively attentive. The one being a little trickier on the resets. And the one with just the weirder counters. Counters coming from strange angles.
Yeah, I mean, we talked a little bit about him as like a Bobby Green. He's never looked more Bobby Green-orific
right,
than I've seen
right.
him in this fight.
Yeah. Switching stance, doing weird, dramatic slips, like moving to any position which allows you to get out of the one where you were just in danger. And just kind of flowing with it. You get the sense with a guy like Johnson or with Bobby Green or like Dominic Cruz to an extent, these are systematic fighters, just with a very particular idiosyncratic system that they're working with. I don't think Johnson's out there just making it up and going with the flow. The weird positions he's put himself in are the ones he puts himself in all the time in sparring. And a very good sort of bridge-building performance from Charles Johnson, getting from one position to the next, getting from one punch to the next, just staying a little more in control of the flow of the exchanges than the young talented Joshua Van. And then finishing him with a completely brutal coffin nail uppercut off a double pawing jab, as Johnson was already reeling from, again, a weird counter right hook. But,
yeah, I mean, this was, as I said, like this was the best I think I've seen Johnson look in terms of just like the pace he was keeping. Managed to sort of stay on top of the. One of the things he just managed to stay on top of like the diversity, like in terms of overloading the opponent. It's always easier to have to do your stuff than it is to react to the opponents. And
yes.
So like, unless you're an incredibly, strong, like jab and 1-2 guy who can just control someone with that, a lot of the time it just makes a lot of sense to give people lots to think about. And yeah, Johnson was the one doing that in this fight. Van can be a diverse puncher, but it felt like he was trying to think too much about what Johnson was doing and just ended up being, much too much of a just straightforward, jab right hand guy.
Yeah.
Which we know he can be better than, but, as you said with Johnson, he was like hiding behind his shoulder and pulling away and like coming back with weird counters and kicking and constantly like attacking levels.
Yes.
Like shovel hook to the body, constantly going for uppercuts, standing Van up. And yeah, the uppercut was eventually what ended it for him. But as we said, this looked like it would be a good matchup between like body punchers and guys that mix up their striking levels. But it was only Johnson, really. Like Van just sort of got hypnotized into going for the head the whole time.
Yeah, I think it was a balance that Johnson kind of struck where he made Van spend like 65% of his time trying to get into position to throw.
Mm-hmm.
Resetting his feet, changing directions, changing stances. Made Van do a lot of movement just to get to the part where he could throw. And yeah, I think it did. It hypnotized Van into once he finally got there, he ended up being more predictable than he would if the opponent was just more easily cornered and stuck in one place.
Yep.
And there was also the fact that Johnson was not only ready to counter him after he would throw these, but was using these moments of build-up, of building the pressure to break rhythm and interrupt Van's advances. Catch him with weird shots, hit him to the body, and trouble him right when he was kind of settling in to a rhythm and getting to the point where he was going to be comfortable enough to line up and throw a combination. Johnson did not let him get a roll going. Really all throughout the second round, in fact. It's not like Van he had plenty of success, but none of it actually led to further success. They were all momentary punches would land, and then Johnson would kind of change his defensive approach, slow things down, and then as the fight wore on, Johnson got more and more aggressive himself. Started putting longer combinations together, started pressuring Van a little bit, which is clearly something Van was not comfortable with, which is no surprise. And there were points where we talked about the height and the fact that it was a bit of an issue for Van against Felipe. I'm forgetting his last name. But this is the first time it looked like somebody had actually ever used their height to bully him a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
To actually impose on him. And all throughout the last minute of round 2 until the end of the fight, Johnson was kind of, despite being the taller, longer man, was kind of crowding Van. Was kind of just walking up into his grill and poking him with the jab and just kind of being imposing. Being tall and being in his face. And I think Van has only ever encountered height and reach as a barrier to break through, to get to the opponent where they will ultimately be vulnerable. And not only was Johnson just not as vulnerable as anybody else when Van finally got to the good ranges. He was way more aggressive and effective using his reach in the in-between.
Yeah. As I said, that's the best performance I think I've seen of him. From him.
And that's 3 in a row now for Charles Johnson.
Yeah. And, like, fought at a higher pace than he normally does, sped it up faster than he normally does. And yeah, I think, Joshua Van is still like 22. And it's not surprising that this kind of performance, in the same way that, in the same way that Rodriguez, faltered slightly before Erosa, or as you said, like Do Ho Choi against Cub Swanson. It just happens. Like, if you've never seen it before, and it's a valuable learning experience to recognize that there are people who are going to match your intensity and sometimes rise above it, and you need to find some way to get around that, whether it's pushing it off to one side, like Namajunas, or like Namajunas was able to, or whether it's simply by like matching and increasing the intensity.
Yeah,
but it's just a lesson for them.
Yep.
And both of them, I think, are young and good enough to be able to absorb it.
Yeah. I mean, these are, to put a point on it, these are two fighters about both of whom we have said they look like much older, more experienced fighters than they are. Mm-hmm. I suppose it could be a helpful reminder for us and for them. There are still things to learn. There are certain things that you just, there's no substitute for time to get that requisite level of seasoning. All right, well, let's take a break there then. From again, I thought a very fun card, travel cards for the win, I suppose. Another one that wasn't an Apex event, and it felt like something was happening. So, hooray for that. We are, unfortunately, back to the Apex next weekend to see Amanda Lemos take on Lemos-Jandiroba. I have seen worse Apex cards, I think. But we'll talk about that after this.
Financial support is fantastic, but there are other, even easier ways to support Heavy Hands. Perhaps the best is by spreading the word. We know our fan base. You're all cool, popular people with serious social media presences. You're tastemakers and trendsetters. Okay, there are one or two of you that don't fit that description. You know who you are, but no matter what, you can always help us out by telling folks about the show. And you can also give us a positive rating and review on iTunes and Stitcher, things like that. We rely on word of mouth and positive feedback to grow and improve, so thank you very much for your time and your help. Now, back to the show.
Amanda Lemos, Lemos-Jandiroba, two names I've probably never pronounced 100% correctly. Both of them sharing the top of the bill at the UFC Apex, Las Vegas's most exclusive destination.
Yeah.
I mean, it is very exclusive, unless you're a fighter, in which case you've definitely fought there.
Yeah. This is, in terms of main events, this is certainly one. It's certainly a fight.
Yeah, I mean, look, far be it from me to say that women's strawweight shouldn't be in main events. These are two, like, fringe contenders. They're top fighters in their division. That's really all I need for a fight night main event. But I always feel with these sort of weight classes, where some people maybe have a more negative opinion of them. A lot of people just don't care about women's fights, for example. Or if it's like smaller male fighters, a lot of fucking blockheaded fans can't appreciate them. My feeling is always that you give them a hand as the promoter, you know? Do you want people to never care about these kinds of fighters or these weight classes? Great. Only give them a main event when it's like pure content and it's in your content factory where you you grind the bones of executed fighters into yet more content. This doesn't do a lot. It feels like to help people to like care about women's strawweight, because the co-main event is Brad Tavares' corpse versus Jun Young Park, a fighter I like, but who basically nobody else cares about.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's kind of like Doo-Ha Choi is returning on this card. The aforementioned. He is now...
Definitely, yes. Definitely no longer a Korean superboy.
He's now the Korean middle-aged man. He's 33 years old.
Yep.
And even then, he has not fought for a year and a half at this point. It has been that long since his last fight, which was a draw against Kyle Nelson, prior to which he had not fought for like 4 years. 3 or 4 years. So he's been super inactive, as well as just simply not being the boy that had the MMA world so excited any longer. So yeah, it's a card. It's an Apex card. I've seen worse, like I said, but I know what it is when I see it. I didn't have to. Let me say this: I didn't have to check the location to tell that this was an Apex card.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing: is that it's a bunch of people that I'm not unhappy with watching in a vacuum, but just the general premises of just a sort of old and near broken toys being thrown together.
Yeah.
And Kurt Hollabar, I love Kurt Hollabar.
Sure, who doesn't?
I loved Kurt Hollabar. Bill Algeo Doo-Ho Choi is the cool fight, but one of these guys is old now. Brian Kelleher, Cody Gibson, I'm interested in these guys, but it's the fact that there is a consistent theme running through this card.
Yeah, we don't know what else to do with you.
Yeah. Oh, it does have Mohammed Usman in there. I'm much happier about it now.
Actually, me too. I did not notice Mohammed Usman. Look, is he followed very shortly by two of the worst women's fighters in the UFC, and then Trey Ogden, one of the most boring men on the planet? Yes. Yes, he is. But he will be Mohammed Usman. On that we can count.
Sweet. But yeah, the main event, one of the reasons why it feels a little underwhelming is that these are two very flawed fighters.
Yes.
And they are going to give us what is certainly a two true outcome fight, which might necessarily be a two true outcome fight that plays out with each one of them having success.
Yes.
And the others, it might have, with each one of them having success. Because, like I said, they're really flawed. Like, Amanda Lemos is a really bad wrestler.
Yep.
And Lemos-Jandiroba is a really bad striker.
Yep.
So yeah, it's actually a surprisingly difficult fight to call, because you can say Lemos should just be insulated in this one by her physicality, and then you can just go back and look at her getting taken down by consistently and historically dismal takedowns of Mackenzie Dern.
Yeah.
It's not even the way these young fights. The fact that Mackenzie Dern managed to get her down.
Yep.
And then you're like, well, maybe it just takes wrestling. And then you realize how little Lemos-Jandiroba has apart from the wrestling. She is perhaps, when you look at her own fight, for example, with Mackenzie Dern, and then watch her fairly badly losing the striking against Mackenzie Dern.
Yep.
So yeah, it's a rough one. I mean, I'm just going to go with athleticism and potency.
Yeah.
I've got to pick Lemos over 5 rounds. The flip side of that Dern fight was that she showed that she's actually quite difficult to finish on the ground for most opponents.
Mm-hmm.
She's not going to be that easy to submit. And she's just going to be hitting Jandiroba incredibly hard whenever they're on the feet.
Yeah. That's kind of my gut feeling as well. That just, yeah, Jandiroba gained some confidence in the striking, and I think she gained enough aggression that she's able to actually connect it to her wrestling, which is not a thing she had previously, and it has made a big difference. I mean, I think it's turned her into a much more consistent fighter, but she's still just a very awkward, not good striker. I mean, she's not a dangerous striker, and so she doesn't really have a good excuse for the jankiness of her technique. She can throw a jab, sort of okay. She puts her right hand behind it, and she, like, without fail, she will, like, fall forward and, like, lose her footing, and there's no power because she's moving her feet too much while throwing the right hand, so it's really, like, the worst of both worlds. But I do also kind of agree that this could be a one true outcome fight, in that we see both of the two outcomes.
Yep.
And there is a distinct possibility of Amanda Lemos having a ton of success and just not quite being able to put Virna Jandiroba away, like probably because it means following her to the ground. Where, I mean, Jandiroba's wrestling isn't even good. The fact that she manages to get on top of so many people is because she has like a Damian Maya thing going on, where she can completely miss on a takedown or get taken down and then just start entangling your legs from half guard and working her way back up into a shot from which she slowly, frustratingly gets back to top position. It's a very sticky, annoying grappling style that I don't expect Lemos to deal with all that well. Because this is the other thing about Lemos, like, for as massive of a puncher as she is, she doesn't actually get that many knockouts against high-level opponents. Because she's very one and done. The speed is the thing you got to get used to, and if you can take a few shots, you will get used to it. She gets tired, her output diminishes, and she's not a calm finisher. So when she manages to hurt somebody, she is not routinely doing exactly what she needs to put them away efficiently. So I think there's a pretty high chance of Lemos winning the first round violently, and then the fight corner kind of slowing to a crawl, which maybe she starts to lose because it ends up a lot more on the ground.
Yeah.
But I'm still inclined to take Lemos. It's just tough to, any time they're on the feet, anytime, I think Lemos is going to be able to nail Jandiroba clean with just like a lunging right hand.
Yeah, I just think that, like, Jandiroba's just going to be, over 5 rounds, there's just more chances that Jandiroba's just going to get badly compromised at some point.
Yeah.
You know, she's going to be starting to get pretty badly beaten up.
God, Lemos.
I mean, it could be a bit like, Zhang. Lemos, where Lemos just gets put on her back, can't get up, and just eventually gets knackered.
I mean, that's the other thing, the 5-round thing.
Yeah.
Lemos in round 4, if it goes that far. She's had to do a bunch of grappling. I always pick the grappler if I really think a fight is going to go that long. I mean, I frequently will pick the wrestler or grappler because it just comes in handier when both fighters are exhausted, or when the fighter who doesn't like wrestling and grappling is exhausted.
Yeah, I think I've got to go for like I'm just going to go for like the Garn Spivak kind of thing, which is that even though like Jandiroba has like an obvious technical edge that she can ride to victory, and that, you know, Lemos has clear like grappling deficiencies, it's just the physical horsepower. I've just never seen, has Jandiroba ever actually beaten anyone you would consider to be a even okay athlete?
Yeah, like Lupi, Godinez, Kaneko Murata, very inexperienced. There's not a lot.
Yeah.
She also just hasn't fought a lot of punchers. I mean, there aren't a ton of punchers at women's strawweight. Like, on the one hand, you want to say, well, Jandiroba's never been knocked out.
Yeah.
They're really expecting Lemos. But who has she fought who is even remotely like Lemos in terms of power and speed? Nobody.
No.
There's not one.
No one.
That's even a comparison. And she is very hittable. So yeah, I'll stick with the Lemos, but 5 rounds, knowing Lemos will get tired if it goes long, knowing the grappling will just get worse and worse for her the more tired she gets. Like you said, a fight defined by the weaknesses of the two fighters as much as it is by their strengths.
Yep.
All right. Well, I think that's just about it for this week's episode. We got really into the Namajunas-Cortez card, which I think is for the best. It was a more interesting card. There was lots to say, a lot of good fights, some developing stories, some upsets, and I don't want to talk about any of the other stuff from this Apex card. We did the main event.
I mean, if I knew who the guy Muhammad Usman was fighting, I might want to talk about that, but I don't.
Yeah, I don't. Thomas Peterson. That could just be a replacement name, for all I know.
Yeah. Could be anyone.
Muhammad Usman versus John Doe.
Yep.
All right. Well, let's end it there then. Please do join us again next week, where Lemos-Jandiroba will be back on the docket, almost certainly, but we will also be looking ahead to UFC 304. Which
means that actually we will not be talking about Lemos-Jandiroba.
Yeah, actually, you're right. Come back next week when Lemos-Jandiroba will have never happened. As far as we're concerned. Sleep for a week. And then join us again when we'll be talking about Leon Edwards, Bilal Muhammad 2, and Tom Aspinall, Curtis Blades, Bobby Green, Paddy Pimblett. That sounds so stupid.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Mukayev versus Manel Kape, Arnold Allen, Giga Chikadze. I mean, there's stories all over this damn card. It's a pay-per-view. So, yeah.
Yep.
Good point, Phil. Fuck Amanda Lemos and Verna Jandiroba. Fuck the UFC Apex. We'll be done with it next week, and we hope you will enjoy hearing us talk about a big pay-per-view card. Until then, check out my Substack, facepunching.substack.com. I got a little piece coming on Rose Namajunas' win over Tracy Cortez, which should be up very shortly. Check us out on Patreon. Again, I'm pretty sure we'll have more Heavy Hanka, our sumo recap show with Miguel Class, very soon. And find us on Twitter at Evil Greg Jackson. That's Phil. At Boxing Bush. That's me. We'll talk to you next week. And until then, if you came here today for the finer points of face punching, you came to the right place. This has been Heavy Hands.